Hi, this is Jonathan Rosenhead, Jerusalem psychotherapist. In this week's Torah and Psychology post, Parshas Acharei and Mos-Kedoshim, we see an emerging theme of a connection between eating food and Kedusha. If we look at Parshas Acharei, we're obviously told and we read about the elevated holy day of Yom Kippur, a day when we are commanded to fast, not to eat for the entire day. And we continue, we also read about the importance of not consuming any blood. And continuing on, we also in Parshas Kedoshim actually says a connection that the whole Parsha is about Kedusha. Kedoshim Tiyu, that we should be holy. And at the end of the Parsha actually makes this connection between Kedusha and Kashrus. Now I'd like to develop this idea, because there's an interesting Gemara in Tanis that discusses the idea of someone who wants to take upon himself a fast, Tanit Rashut, that someone decides that they want to fast. And the Gemara discusses whether this is seen as a good thing or a bad thing. And it's suggested that the Gemara presents this idea that because we are holy, the wording of the Gemara is that a person's insides, the stomach, a person is holy, including their stomach, and it's a more holistic view that everything about the person is holy, and therefore they should not deprive themselves. Their stomach, in the wording of the Gemara, should not be deprived of food. The Gemara continues and says that would be the case for someone who's not used to fasting, and therefore it would cause them suffering, perhaps. And it's not seen as an appropriate thing, but someone who is used to it or is accustomed to fasting, it's seen as actually being a praiseworthy thing to take upon himself a fast. But what comes out is this idea of, which the Gemara presents, is a possible idea that we are holy, our stomachs, our very being, and the need to eat and provide nourishment to our body and to our stomach is seen as supporting our holiness and the holiness of the body that Hashem has created. And we could say food it's a primitive need. A human being needs food. It's, in a sense, it's playing into the emotional base desires of the human being, of what they need. They want to eat, they need to eat, they're hungry, they're thirsty, and therefore they provide this nourishment and almost immediate, you could say, instant gratification, and they listen to the animalistic needs, you could say, of the human being, and provide, and they have to eat. That's why we have to eat. And looking at it on a very superficial, basic level, on an animalistic level, it's providing this primitive need. But the Gemara suggests that there's an elevated process that's going on, that we can view it from a higher level of Kedusha. There's holiness to the human being, holiness to the stomach, holiness in providing nourishment to the body that Hashem has created. And therefore it's not just about listening or just giving this instant gratification and giving into your base emotional needs, your physical and emotional needs. There's a thought process, there's a cognitive awareness, a higher level of processing that goes into this. And that's why you could say that if we take this message of Acharei Mos-Kedoshim, is that there's actually a Kedusha of being able to find this balance, of being able to understand that there are times where we need to understand what food we are allowed to put into our body. In general, kashrus, we've read already in the previous parsha, but is highlighted again in Acharei Mos-Kedoshim, that kashrus is intrinsically linked to Kedusha, because it's not just a primitive animalistic need, but there is this higher level of spirituality, of understanding the Kedusha of the human body that Hashem has created. And it's engaging both on an emotional level and also on a cognitive, rational level. It's creating this mentalization of what it means to be a human being, but a human being that is created b'tzelem Elokim. And therefore, if we look at this, also Yom Kippur is ingrained within us as a day where it's important to actually say, no, we're not going to eat. We're on a higher level. It's a fusion of an emotional and cognitive awareness of what it means to be a human being, but on a higher level. This is the greatest day, which is a synthesis of the different aspects of our of our existence, both as a human being, a basic human being that was created by Hashem, and also infused with this Kedusha. And that is what Yom Kippur represents. And if we look from a psychological level in terms of how we function, there are times where we seem to be overwhelmed by emotion, and it could be just something that we really want. It seems to be that we can't control our emotions. There's this almost animalistic need of, I want this, I need this in our life. And there's so many different situations where this can happen. Where if someone annoys us and angers us, there's this basic need of wanting to get revenge and to show them that we don't stand for their behavior. We need to shout at them, we need to respond maybe in an aggressive way. But there's also obviously an importance of engaging both the emotional need and the basic desires that we have and the basic responses on an emotional level, and also engaging the higher level cognitions. And this fusion creates this state of Kedusha. So if we take this example of Acharei Mos-Kedoshim, this idea of kashrus and Kedusha, what emerges, and from the lesson that we can take from the Gemara in Tanis, is that we are holy, and there is a holiness to everything, even in our need to provide nourishment for our body. But it's the awareness of this balance between the emotional, behavioral desires as well, a more basic, primitive response mechanism that we have, and also a higher, elevated cognitive awareness. And we engage all of these parts together, and that provides us with this greater, holistic, elevated view of our life as being a holy creation, imbued with this Kedusha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and living a life of holiness. Have a great Shabbos and keep well.